Hello and welcome to a special bonus edition of the Kalon S Rugby Podcast. It is just short of 5 o'clock. The Ireland squad for the 2023 Rugby World Cup has just been announced in the past half hour. And there is one big casualty. Cian Healy, an Irish rugby legend, misses out due to injury sustained against Samoa just last night. And it's cruel. It's the nature of the warm-up games. They are a necessary evil. But that is the major blow. His place goes to Munster's Jeremy Loughman, who has earned just 2 caps for Ireland, but a capable substitute nonetheless. Today's pod is pretty much as you'd imagine. We're just going to run through the squad in detail from 1 to 33. Have a look at the fixtures, what way we see Ireland going. Just myself today, mixing it up. But hopefully you like this, and if you want further conversation, there will be a podcast going up this evening, Sunday evening, with Tom Coleman and Cian O'Muller looking at Ireland Samoa and looking at the Ireland squad, of course, which will be dominating the news headlines over the next 24 to 48 hours. So we'll get into it. First of all, 33-man squad named today, Sunday, and I will just go through the squad first of all, starting with the front row of Andrew Porter, Dave Kilcoyne, Jeremy Loughman, Dan Sheehan, Ronan Kelleher and Rob Herring, Tyke Furlong, Finlay Bealham and Tom O'Toole. The second row contains James Ryan, Tyke Byrne, Ian Henderson, Joe McCarthy, and the back row, Ryan Baird, Peter O'Mahony, Josh van der Fleer, Caelan Doris and Jack Conan. In the backs, half-back starts with Jemison Gibson Park, Conor Murray and Craig Casey. Side, of course, is always captained by Johnny Sexton, who also has half-back teammates of Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley for company. Gary Ringrose, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw and Ulster's Stuart McCluskey, all 4 centres named as Ireland go with that 18-15 split. And in the outside backs, James Lowe, Matt Hansen, Keith Earls, Jimmy O'Brien and Hugo Keenan. So we might just start by looking at the guys who were omitted first of all. So as I said, Cian Healy went off injured in the first 20 minutes, I believe it was, against Samoa with what appeared to be a calf strain. Andy Farrell said afterwards that it looks like he could be facing anything between 5 to 10 weeks on the sidelines based on the initial scans. And it's tough. There's no point in sugarcoating it. Cian is one of Ireland's legends, one of Ireland's great ever players, best ever loose head, I think you can say, second most cap player of all time. And to borrow an American football parlance, they say if you split someone's career in two, and it makes 2 incredible individual careers, you've done something right. And you can do that for Cian Healy. Because up until about 2016, 2017, he was struggling with injuries at times, that middle part of his career. And there was a rough period there. There's no doubt about it. He said he was close to retiring. Jack McGrath looked to be the heir to his throne. And obviously Cian had done so much in the first half of his career, missed out on the Lions tour in 2013, never got back to that stage, unfortunately. And then the second half of his career has just been incredible. Like the fact that a man of his age and in a attritional position like that, he's just kicked on and he's been a cornerstone of this Irish team. We've seen it in Murrayfield just back in March, going in at hooker and absolutely demolishing the Scottish scrum. If this is the last we see of Cian Healy in green, thank you. You've been an absolute legend, an incredible servant in the jersey, and left in a better place than what he found it. And he found it in a great place. There's no doubt about that. So let's hope it's not. But moving on, we also had Ulster's Tom Stewart got the nod to start at the weekend, and Tom Stewart misses out as well. Now, he came into this as 4th choice hooker. I think there's a good chance if all 3 hookers had remained fit, he didn't make it to the Samoa game. He would have been coach after the England game, but that's how it goes. And he just misses out. But there's a good chance he could travel because you do have the injury concerns about Dan Sheehan and Ronan Kelleher. Yeah, they're progressing, but we don't know. We won't know until they get over there exactly where these guys stand. They could well call up Tom Stewart yet. And Munster's Jimmy Barron was a late called up twice actually, called up during the summer as well. Has not played for Ireland. Did go on the Emerging Ireland tour and played for Ireland A, but Again, another guy, maybe he could end up being close, like stay by the phone, as they say with these things, especially with the World Cup just over in France. And probably the most unlucky man, aside from Keane Healy, is Connacht's Keane Prendergast. Came off the bench against Italy, was really, really sharp there, and then started against England. I thought he was really good. I thought he cemented his place on the plane in that game, to be honest. It looked like Ireland would go 1914 like everyone else. That was the inclination. And then as soon as the Irish media followed them over to France, they said looks like they're going 1815 as opposed to 1914, and that's where Prendergast gets caught, you feel like. They've gone McCluskey. But I think we can assume it's McCluskey because I don't know if we needed to go four centres if especially with three 12s. If they went with the other split of 19 forwards, and it's tough for Prendergast, but I think there's more World Cups in his future. I think he's the type of character he will bounce back from this, and I wouldn't like to be the one making him in Connacht training in the next couple of weeks. But listen, great player, great talent. He's done it at 6, he's done it at 8. His first cap for Ireland came off the bench to play in the second row, so definitely one to keep an eye on. Kieran Frawley only got one game, but did stay with the squad. Made his international debut off the bench against Italy and did all right. I made comments at the time that I didn't think he did anything really impressive as a 10, but I don't believe he's a 10. If he was to go, it would have been a 12, but you just look again at the options at stake. You look at Bundyaki, Robbie Henshaw, Stuart McCluskey, and Jack Crowley probably cemented his place on the plane as well, and he can cover 12 as well. So it's where the depth is at, and I've already written my World Cup preview for Ireland, which will go live next Friday or next Saturday, the preview article. And one of the things I mentioned is the depth. I haven't been this positive for an Irish team heading into a World Cup since 2015, and this is a much better squad. It's much deeper, and guys like Frawley, they make that show. They really do. And again, another guy, plenty more Irish caps in his future. And finally, Jacob Stockdale is the last one who was over in France with the squad to be left out. And Jacob, it's a funny one, isn't it? I feel like with Jacob, you got a situation where he is an incredibly talented rugby player, and I've made no bones about this on the Red Hand podcast and on my own. I think he's wasted at Ulster, and that's not a dig at Ulster as a province, but it's their style, like he looks a better player in green, but the problem is, apart from the 6 weeks that he's training with Ireland, he is probably regressing as a player. He's not playing to his skill set. He's not playing to his talent. He's a very powerful man. We've seen that a few times last night and against Italy. He's very powerful. He's very big. He's got a good left boot in him. But you look at the way Ulster play, and himself and Balakoon are hugging the tram lines. Like, no one's talking about Robert Balakoon. He was mentioned, of course, when the squad was originally named, but like these guys they're very talented. They're more than capable to be in that squad. I know when you say words like that, it sounds like you're knocking a guy, but we're not. Like, just simply not. Jacob Stockdale is a talented rugby player, but as far as I'm concerned, unless Ulster's change their style of play to be more in line with Ireland, he's not going to be battling with James Lowe and Matt Hansen. He's going to be battling with Jordan Larmour and Calvin Nash and Robert Balakoon just to get into the squad. I think that's where it is. And it's a pity. It's a great shame because we see it when he's in green. We see those glimpses of, geez, Jacob in midfield. He's got the power to shrug off a man. His passing game probably isn't where it should be, but then at the same time, you look at, say, Munster at the start of the season and compare them to the end of the season, their passing game improved just because they were throwing more offloads, they were throwing more key distance passes. Jacob doesn't have that. He's not asked to do that. When he was at fullback, he proved he could. He proved he could be that distributor, that playmaker, that powerful runner from midfield. And it's a real shame. I'm a big Jacob Stockdale fan, and I would love to see him getting back to more World Cups in the future. But until things change at Ulster, it's hard to see him getting into possibly even the next Ireland squad, because the Six Nations squad without injuries is probably going to be about 38 or 9. and he could be one to miss out, especially when you got young lads like Nash, Osborne coming through who were omitted before the England game. We'll just get into that list really quickly as well, because I want to talk about the squad. So Kieran Treadwell, another one of the unlucky guys, but we said this at the time. I think his place was just taken by just how good Joe McCarthy was in the two games he got, and he's younger. And I am of the belief that you pick your best players for a World Cup, not it's not the time, it's not the tournament to be planning for the future, but you gotta hand it to him. He went in there and he beat the door down, and he did enough, and gotta give him credit. And Kieran Treadwell misses out, having played all 5 games down in New Zealand, having played most of the games in 2022, played in the Grand Slam decider against England. It's a pity. And another man who probably did feel outdone by is Gavin Coombs. But again, we've got top quality number 8s and Jack Cohn and Caelan Doris. Prendergast shown he could play 6 and 8. That's just where we are. Keelan Blade is a very good rugby player. I've always been a fan of Keelan Blade, but again, you're looking probably Ireland's best ever scrum half, and Conor Murray is ahead of him. Jemson Gibson Park is the man who's important to how we play, and you got Craig Casey, who has a load of different characteristics to be a future Ireland captain. Never mind starter and leader. Just like he's a leader. He could be a captain. Jamie Osborne, he's younger than me. It's one of those weird ones. But he's got a bright future ahead of him. Don't think I've seen enough of him to say that he's, definitely a generational talent. I'm not a fan of that anyway. But he's a good young player. And Calvin Nash, I mean, talking about being a player who benefited from a team change in style. He was not a winger to be chasing kicks under Van Gran and Larkham. He is a winger to come off his wing and to score tries in the RWC final. And I hope this isn't the last we see of Calvin Nash in a green shirt. And I don't think it will be, because I think he'll kick on. You know, I think having a bit of competition there next year is actually going to make it really fun. And one of the other players who could well have been in the squad if it wasn't for injury was Andrew Conway. He was in the Ireland squad quite frequently in 2020 and in 2021 towards the back half after injuries. In 2022 he was key in the Triple Crown win. Hasn't played for Ireland since, though, unfortunately, due to those knocks, and it's a shame. But Andrew Conway, another great player, and you look at the depth, and like I did up a list, and I'm not even going to go through everyone of players who could well have been in there, but you look at the likes of Michael Mill, he could be the next man up now at loosehead prop. He could be on that standby list. As they say, like Ross Maloney has been brilliant for Leinster. The guys like Scott Penny, Nick Timoney, John Hodnett, Alex Kindellan. You don't need me to tell you about Ireland's back row depth. Obviously Joey Carberry, Balakoon I mentioned before, and Larmer. Stuart Moore's been really impressive. Shane Daly, James Hume has been capped. Looked like he was ready to take an Ireland jersey. Up until this season, unfortunately for him. And just the whole way through, just every position, there seems to be guys who are international level. And there's a lot of good young players as well. You look at the under-20 success in recent years. It's a lot of talent coming through, and this is. I just hope that no matter what happens in France, this is not an end marker. This is not a lap. This is just one part of the race. We are becoming a marathon team that we can just go, and we can just. You look at France and you look at what they have coming through. I hope we get to that stage. But been talking long enough about those who didn't make it. Unfortunately, that will always take up a lot of the conversation. It's just the nature of it. But we will get into the guys who did make the squad now. So firstly, we'll start with loosehead prop. And we have Andrew Porter, Dave Kilcoyne, and Jeremy Luckman. So obviously, Cian Healy is the name that we would have expected to see in there. Jeremy Luckman, of course, didn't get into the Ireland squad until just before the England game. But around the time they were going to Portugal, but simply because they thought Porter, Kilcoyne, Healy, there are 3. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, Ireland are a cohesive side. Typically it's all about cohesion, and Kilcoyne and Healy, they're not the kind of guys to let you down. Porter is obviously the mainstay starting prop. I was just doing notes during the week, and he's basically played nearly every game for Ireland when fit, apart from these World Cup warm-ups. Since he moved to Loosehead, he's been just starting every single game, or almost. And that's probably why you look at Jeremy Luckman, you see he just has 2 caps, and you're thinking you might be afraid, or 3 caps rather, as he came off the bench last night. And that's just the nature of it, though. I wouldn't be worried. I don't think, like I've said this before, I think if something happens to Ireland, it's going to be external factors like injuries and like suspensions and teams just being better on the day, like France, because that's what France can be. And France is the team that I'd be most afraid of. And I don't think it'll come down to, well, Jeremy Luckman was on the bench, not Cian Healy, and that's what makes a difference. I don't think it'll come down to that. I really don't. And Jeremy's a good player. He had a good URC final going up against France, Malherbe, who's going to be the starting tight head of our World Cup pool rivals. And I like Jeremy. He's kind of a weird one because I think Munster fans have kind of gone back and forth on him. I think he has a skill set. I'm not sure if he's exactly what Ireland want at prop, and I think if he was, I think he would have made more squads, especially off the back of the end of the season with Munster. But he is a good player. He does have the raw materials. I think one of the things that often gets thrown around almost as a dig about props is he's steady. Well, a prop can be steady. A prop can just lock out, and that's fine. You don't need to dominate every scrum. And teams who do always try and dominate, sometimes they can be Achilles' heel because they might be doing things technically wrong. Ireland might be one of those teams, mind you. But I think someone like Jeremy Luckman is fine. And I do believe that everyone in this squad will play in the first 2 games at some stage. Everyone at 33. And that seems like a lot of change, but it might just be 10 changes over the entire match at 23. So I'm still happy with that position group. Moving on, then, I'm going to need to take drinks of water. I'm not used to this sole podcast. You have Dave Kilcoyne and Andrew Porter. I think that's Ireland's 17-1 there, in Kilcoyne and Porter, vice versa, Porter starting. I think we'll see Kilcoyne start one of the first 2 games. You could see Luckman, but I think the question mark about starting Luckman is we're not really sure on him, unless you start him against Romania, because I do believe, I believe all the provinces have beat Romania anyway, first and foremost. But it looks like from word on the street that Romania game will be the chance to get the combinations in place. Your Sextons and Gibson Parks, Aki, Ringrose, O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris. And because of that, I think Luckman got miss out. But I think he'll get a game. And I think Andrew Porter will start that one. The big thing is, and this is a huge luxury, because as much as Cian Healy would be missed, and we've seen what he did when we went into hooker, for instance, and he has done a bit of a job at tight head. Probably not great, to be honest, but it's Cian Healy. If he has a brilliant season at tight head next year, I wouldn't be surprised. But the thing for me is Andrew Porter can go 70 plus minutes at loosehead prop. That is huge. Like we probably don't talk about it enough. That is huge because it takes a bit of pressure off, and people will say maybe it's a weakness and they don't trust the guys beneath them. But I don't think so. I think it's just testament to him. I actually think before, where it would have been himself and Furlong going 70, I think we could see Furlong coming off earlier because Beadham is playing so well at the moment. And we'll move on to that. We'll move on to the other positions first of all, because hooker is a bit of a contentious one. Dan Sheehan, Ronan Kelleher, Rob Herring. There's probably nothing I can say on Rob Herring that hasn't been said before. He is rock solid. He is a leader. He's a set piece specialist. He is everything that you want in a hooker, especially when you already have a Dan Sheehan and Ronan Kelleher in the squad. And I think that's what's wonderful about it. He complements these guys because, yeah, he'll still score tries from mauls and things like that, but he will hit his darts. He will make his carries, make his tackles. And then when Dan Sheehan and Ronan Kelleher are on the field, they'll be bouncing off lads. They'll be running past lads. They'll do the abrasive stuff. That's not Rob Herring's game. It never was. But as I said last night, the only great shame is that Ireland didn't invest in Herring sooner, because I feel like we've probably missed out in a couple of years of him. But Great to see him in there. There is injury question marks over Dan Sheehan and Ronan Kelleher now. There might be quotes in the newspaper in the morning, because all we got to see was the recorded media section for the squad announcement. From that, Dan Sheehan seems to be progressing quicker than expected. That is good. Ronan Kelleher, I would assume Ronan Kelleher is ready to go against Romania. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the squad. Because I can't see Dan Sheehan making it back for that game when the original reports were 8 weeks and World Cup over. So Kelleher must be ready. Otherwise, we're taking a huge gamble, and not a gamble I'd be a big fan of. Ronan Kelleher has gone to the stage now where he's nearly missed as many games he's played. He's only played 3 games for Ireland since the start of 2022. Or 4 games for Ireland or something like that. Like it's not a huge amount. And it's a pity. It's a pity. He's a talented player. He's strong. I think that's why Andy Farrell wants him. He brings a physical presence that we don't usually have in hookers. Even Dan Sheehan is more of a back row style, but Keller's like another prop at times. Like he's quite a round, strong, well built player. And Dan Sheehan, for me, if we get Dan Sheehan back, we can win a World Cup. If we don't, we can win a World Cup, but it's less likely because Dan Sheehan is your difference maker. He's your point of difference. Because I did a podcast before Leinster played La Rochelle in the Heineken Cup final. And one of the points I made was, these Leinster players, I know I got it wrong and I chipped Leinster. So apologies for that. But one of the things I said was guys like Dan Sheehan, they don't play with fear. They're rising to the big moment. Like we're talking about a man who scored 2 tries in the Heineken Cup final, 2 tries in the Grand Slam decider. And in his first big game for Ireland back in 2022, came on for Ronan Kelleher after about 20 minutes and was probably Ireland's best player in the last hour. Like that's the kind of temperament we're on about. He may come out of the blocks slow, especially after an injury, but we're talking about a generational player. I think he had to go anyway. I think Kelleher was the one you could maybe leave out, but I think Sheehan is the guy. Personally, on selection, this is one of the ones where it's not nailed on. I'd be going Sheehan to Herring at 16. It's just preference. That's all. And come World Cup time, come the time the South African game rolls around, I might have seen something to say, no, Kelleher is ready to bench again. Tight head prop, Tyke Furlong. I mean, you can't say any more about Tyke Furlong, can you? British and Irish Lion, twice Ireland captain. He's been to I think this is his 3rd World Cup now. And yeah, I am concerned he's slowing down. I am. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think it's detrimental to Ireland because we have Finlay Bealham there playing such good rugby. And I think, you talk about players who are important to Ireland. We had this conversation on the Harper and Rugby podcast, and I probably could have taken tight head prop, to be honest, but I just think you got in Tyke Furlong and Bealham, you got a great 1-2 punch there. You really do. I would have no problem starting Bealham against South Africa or Scotland and bringing Furlong off the bench. No problem whatsoever. Especially against Scotland, because I think if you go into that Scotland game knowing you're going to a quarterfinal already, say, and you already beat South Africa, say South Africa have lost to Scotland and then lose to Ireland and you're through, I'd definitely be considering it then, 100%, because Furlong's stamina isn't what it was. He's still playing good rugby. He suffers like Conor Murray did in the past, like Josh van der Flier does a small bit now, where he's not as high as his own lofty standards, but he's still playing well. And I think himself and Bealham complement each other nicely. Tom O'Toole is progressing. He's you could say, oh, maybe you're just stumped on Ulster players. It's not. It's just O'Toole he's very good around the park. Scrummaging could do with a bit of work. But again, if we're in a situation like 2015 where we're relying on 3 or 4 or 5 third choice players, we're probably not going to win anyway because we're a cohesive side. And that just doesn't go together. Second row, then James Ryan, vice captain. I think James Ryan's just gone on leaps and bounds in recent years. I think someone must have whispered something into his ear because he is smashing rucks. He is making huge carries, big tackles in recent times, and it suits him. It suits him to have that aggressive footprint on a game. because it's something that Ireland lack. Ian Henderson has the size, but he doesn't necessarily take over games. He'll just go from job to job. James Ryan has done that, and it really works well with the back row as well, because we don't have the most powerful back row. But when you've got someone like Ryan who is nuking Brooks, like he is hitting them like a bomb, that's huge. South Africa have it in Etzebeth and in one of their Munster second rows, who I'll try not to name for the entire podcast. And it's a big tool, especially when you play light and quick ball. You know, and James Ryan played well off the bench against Samoa, played well against England. I think Leinster win the Ireland Cup final if he stays on the field. Tyke Byrne and himself have finally learned how to play together. They've finally found a game style that works, and that's huge because we now have a world class second row pairing. I think Byrne, since his injury, has just been creeping along. Every game he's gone from say a 6.5 to a 7 out of 10, and a 7 out of 10 to a 7.5, and an 7.5 to an 8. And I think we're ready for a Tyke Byrne masterclass in one of these games, because he does this. We've seen with Munster and Ireland before, where he just slowly picks up speed and momentum, and when he gets going, Tyke Byrne is one of the best second rows on the planet. James Ryan in as well in a different job, but because of that blue scrum cap, and because of the fact that he'll make some audacious carries and run some great lines, it's more noticeable, and it's definitely not a position I'd be worried about. Lips are getting dry now, guys. And we're only on the second rows. So the next two then, Ian Henderson and Joe McCarthy, with Ryan Baird as your hybrid option. Henderson and McCarthy impressed me as a pairing against excuse me, against Italy. Thought they really balanced each other out. I feel like Henderson, in a weird way, does better when he's captain. It's like a focus thing, because he does drift in and out of games. And McCarthy, he didn't concede as many penalties as he does for Leinster. And I think I don't know if it's a conversation or they've just talked him through his game, but he seems to be less eager for a young lad as well of 22. It's very easy to be over eager in that situation. So good on him. He has bolted his way into this squad, and cannot speak highly of enough of this, the way he's done it, because it has been a fear of mine that the squad was already named in June. And I think what we're seeing now is it hasn't. And Ryan Baird then is the hybrid option. Ryan Baird at 6, when he's gone to 6 for Ireland, has kind of been trying to play the Peter O'Mahony role. And I think that is the apologies, folks. That is what we're looking at. We're looking at Ryan Baird to be next to Peter O'Mahony as second choice, and instead of going Doris Conan, I believe. I could be proven entirely wrong, but I feel like that's the way they're going. And maybe that's because, as well, if Van der Fleer goes down, do they go with O'Mahony to 7 because you have to keep Doris on the pitch? Maybe that's it as well. But again, it's good to have options. Like, if you're like, you look at that back row, like, there's literally nothing I can say about O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris, and Conan. Nothing I can add that is going to change your mind on them. They are 4 unbelievably talented back rowers, and I think 2 of them walk into almost every back row in the world. 3 of them make most. 4 of them make quite a few in the World Cup. Not very much I could say. And you look at that, you look at those 18 forwards, and I'm confident. I don't see a weak link. Yes, it's easy to say Lookman. It's easy to say Joe McCarthy or Baird or Conan when he's beside Doris, but listen, wait and see. Just wait and see. Personally, I think that Peter O'Mahony has really kicked on. He has really, really kicked on since he came back from winning the RWC with Munster. I think he's like a lad who has just had weight lifted off his shoulders, to be honest. I know he's only played 1 and a bit games, but Pete is a demeanor guy. He's a feel you know when he walks onto the pitch sometimes that he's going to have a good day. You can just see it in his eyes. And you kind of had that against England. Like, he pushed the bar with legality with some of those some of those carries and dropping the shoulder, but he was hitting hard, and he's so important to our Ireland play, because when Peter O'Mahony's in our set piece and our line out, it functions better, because he is the guy, even at the lowest level of the game to the highest level. If you have a player that you could throw into the air at 2 or at 4, and you are confident that he will win it, even on opposition ball sometimes, that's huge. That's just a huge psychological thing. I actually think Samoa didn't have that in their set piece list. They didn't have their go-to, which could come back to haunt them, especially when what they're really weak at is what England are really strong at in a game that they'll be targeting. But that's for another day's conversation in a couple of weeks' time. O'Mahony he's the glue player, and Van der Fleer certainly became a bit of a highlights reel player last year in a good way. Don't get me wrong. He just started to do everything. He was carrying, he was kicking, he was, he shaved down his handicap in golf. He was thrown into the lineouts, like just as you do. But that's Ireland's best back row on balance is O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris, and I feel like Doris as well, as I said about Byrne, just playing his way into it, slowly getting going. I know he's man the match against Italy. I'm not discounting that. But just game by game, it's just getting a little bit better. And again, I can see him having a massive impact in either the South Africa or Scotland game. And reality is, Porter, Sheehan, Furlong, Ryan, Byrne, O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris. If Ireland are going to win a World Cup, every single one of them is going to have at least one big game. I don't see how we do it without it. I genuinely don't, because you can win the World Cup with one bad game in general, but you're still going to have players who play well on the day. And that pack, then I'm confident. I'm really, really confident in that pack. I think we don't try and bully teams. We haven't been sucked into that game. And yes, like yesterday, our ruck speed, I have it here. So rucks of less than, so our own ruck, our ruck speed of 0 to 3 seconds was only 45% of the time. Now, if you compare that to other days, that's usually up at 60, 70, possibly even 80% some days, or for periods of games. That was just a lot of things. I think that was guys afraid to get injured. That was, the slippery ball. People are blaming Conor Murray, but you've come to the wrong podcast, Sunshine, if you want to hear Conor Murray slander. The wrong place. It's not going to happen here. He's a very good player. And Ireland's ruck speed, it was poor yesterday, and we'll probably touch on it in the recap pod. But it's not a cause of concern for me, because they still dominated England at the breakdown. They dominated Italy at the breakdown, with faster scrum halves on the pitch, and didn't dominate yesterday. So it's easy to look at Conor Murray. And I suppose we're moving on to the back line now. So Murray alongside his Munster teammate Craig Casey and James Gibson Park. Casey, for me, he's potentially a future Lion. He's potentially a future Ireland captain. Maybe not a full-time captain. I'm not, completely overblowing this. But he's a future captain. He's a future leader. And Gibson Park is key to how we play. I think Jameson Gibson Park, what he brings you in speed, he's not the most accurate player, but he plays at such speed that it's fine. We're allowed to make handling errors. You look at South Africa, for instance, they're wasteful in the opposition 22, but that's okay when you get into the 22 as many times as they do. For Ireland, it's okay that Gibson Park will have 2 or 3 bad passes when we play at the speed and the tempo that we do. It's absolutely fine. We play an incredible on-ball counter transition game that is just lightning. It is blow after blow. It is contact. You don't know where to look. You don't know what options they're going to run. And you're no sooner back on the defensive line and you're shooting up again, and it causes that doubt. And you've seen it for Bundiaki's try, for instance, quick ball, Gibson Park is there. And now it's a very simple pod for England to defend, really, because Van der Fleer is very, very flat. He does not sell it as well as he probably could. But still, that speed of ball, England were gassed by the time they got over to the other side of the pitch. And that's what Ireland do best. They will run you. they will run you ragged, and Gibson Park is key to that. But Conor Murray is also important, very important, because he is your accuracy guy. He is the guy who'll take the game on his shoulders. And what impresses me about Conor Murray is off the bench. Now, I know he started the URC final and he started the Glasgow game and came off with a concussion in the first half of that one. But when Conor Murray starts on the bench for Ireland, we've seen it. I'm trying to think. The game that always stands out for me is Ireland England in Twickenham in 2022. As well as Conor coming on and being accurate. Yes, his kicking game isn't where it once was. He's not sniping as much, but that's okay. That's fine. Just because he's not the player he was 7 years ago doesn't mean he's not a very good player to what Ireland do now. But it's just the fact that when Conor comes on, he seems to know what the game is asking for because he's a very, very smart scrum half. He's not a get there and spin it and do nothing else kind of guy. He's smart. He reads the game well. He is another Sexton without the voice. He's not a very vocal player. He just, learn by doing, lead by doing type thing. And that's key as well. And when you have a situation where Sexton is, I don't want to use the word flight risk because that's just not true, but he can pick up injuries. Conor Murray becomes very important. He does, because he can play with Ross Byrne and he can control that game. He did that last night when Byrne came on. Like people saying, "Oh, Byrne saw it out." I don't really think so. I think Conor just had the game on his back at that stage, and when it was time to go to Ross Byrne, he did. But apart from that, he was the one, just dictating the style of the game, the pace of the game. And people might want him dropped. Sorry, you're not going to see it. You're not going to see it as far as I can see. I've seen nothing in Conor Murray's game that suggests he will be dropped. Maybe I'm overlooking something, and I'll hold my hand up if I am. But I feel like he's doing exactly what the coaches are asking of him, and he is the leader on the field, and that's what we want. And then, the actual leader, the man who is going to bring us into this World Cup as captain, is Johnny Sexton. He's served his ban. That's said and done now. I know by the time the quarterfinals comes around or the South African game, it's going to be on every newspaper in the rugby world. But he has served his ban. Whatever you think about it, it is done. Now let's move on to the rugby. And I'm sure that's the attitude he will set. And Johnny Sexton, Ireland can win a World Cup without Johnny Sexton for maybe a game or two, but not for all 7 games. Because Sexton is just Sexton. Like, sometimes we're quick to say here's the faults in player B, but we're literally just on about one of the best players ever. It's as plain as simple as that. Ross Byrne is good. Jack Crowley is, in my opinion, better, but he is younger and a bit more raw. And is it an ideal position to be in? If you ask the coaches in 2020, would they rather have Byrne or Joey Carberry? They'd probably say Carberry, but just the way things have gone, it has not been the 4-year cycle that Joey Carberry wanted, through injuries and other reasons. And I back Ross Byrne to take his chance. I don't think we're going to see any game where Ross Byrne looks like Finn, or he looks like Entomac, or he looks like Moanga, because he's not as quick. He's not that type of 10. Ross Byrne is a passing, standing pass, pick the right pass, pick the right kick type 10. And yeah, he'll make mistakes. He's not unflappable. Like, if he was, he'd be starting. If we had a perfect player, he'd be starting. But he is just rock solid, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. Personally, in terms of what I would like to see Ireland go for, would suit Jack Crowley, because he brings a threat to the defensive line. He carries at pace. He picks the right man, and he's not afraid to go for bold moments. Go for that crossfield kick against Samoa, or as he did against the Stormers. Drop goals, going on these slalom runs that we know he can do. But his time will come. I'm sure that his time will come. He's a very, very good 10. I do think Ross Byrne's ahead of him as of right now. And I don't believe, as much as I like Jack, you're not going to hear me come on here and say, Ireland need a 10 who can change games. Because realistically, in any game that matters, Johnny Sexton's going to play 75 plus minutes. And not even God Almighty would change the result in the last 5 minutes in a game that needs to be changed. I feel like it's a real English narrative with, say, Farrell and Smith and guys like that. But if you can find me 5 instances where a 10 has come off the bench to completely change a game, I'll find you about 100 where a 10 has come off the bench and just seen it out. And that's what we need Ross Byrne to be. Did it against France this year, did it against England to a lesser degree because we were about 14 points up at the time. But the French game in particular, it's there. I think we just need to find his confidence again. I think the Champions Cup final rocked him, and I think having Jack Crowley in the squad, playing with the confidence, playing with the pointy elbows, as I just say, that rocked him a small bit. But again, the competition is good. I will roll back on what I said previously. I do think there is competition in the squad. It's not in every position, but I do think it's there, and that's something. That's okay. The centres, then we've gone for 4, and as I said, would I have gone with Keane Prendergast over Stuart McCluskey? Probably, but it's a tough one because you do also have the fact that Bundiaki is a suspension risk in these games. He's playing incredibly well, but any player who hits as hard as he does can get it wrong at the wrong time, and it could happen. And that's just the nature of it. It's not a slide on him. He's had what 2-3 red cards in his career. McCluskey's had 1, and that was like 9-10 years ago, I think it was when I looked it up. And then Robbie Henshaw. I like Robbie Henshaw. I'm a huge Robbie Henshaw fan, but he's not playing very well at the moment. Gary Ringrose is not as high of a form as he was in the middle of the season, say November through to February or March. Well, he played 1 game in March, so through to February. But again, I think I'd be fairly confident in any of those pairings. I wasn't too impressed with Henshaw and McCluskey in their 2 games. I feel like they're old enough and smart enough to figure out how to make it work beside each other, and they just didn't. The game passed them by twice, and they both played 100 but I think, did Henshaw come off against Italy, if I'm right in saying? I could be right there. They played the full 80 the last night, and just a little bit disappointed, but they're on the plane. And now they have 2 weeks. They could well start against Romania or Tonga to figure it out, and go out there and figure it out, lads, because you should be vying for Bundiaki's jersey as well. That's the other side of them. Is Henshaw now seen as a cover 13? He could be, because he's, Murray Kinster dropped his stat during the week. He has now played more games at 13 for Ireland than 12 in the Andy Farrell era. And maybe that's where they see him. I do believe if we're to go on previous form, it'll be Bundy and Ringrose with Henshaw on the bench. Some people say Jimmy O'Brien for versatility, but I feel like it will be Henshaw, because they seem to value Ringrose's ability to go to the wing rose, as a couple of Leinster fans want to call him. I'm sorry I even said that now. But then at the same time, if you do go with Henshaw's not going to go back to fullback. Like, let's just give up on that. Like, let's drop these narratives of player played there back in the day, so he can do it now. The game has changed. It's not going to happen. So if you do go with Henshaw on the bench, we haven't seen a Hansen at 15, which I'd like to have seen personally, and I don't think Jack Crowley will be on the bench. And when we went with centre on the bench, predominantly that was in 2022 when we had Joey Carberry in the squad. So again, all these things should be weighed up. And I'm sure the coaching ticket will figure out what they want there. Finally, in the back 3, James Lowe, Matt Hansen, Keith Earls, Jimmy O'Brien, Hugo Keenan. I've done a soliloquy on Keith Earls last week, and I won't go again, but delighted to see him in the squad. He's a leader, he's a warrior, and he's what Ireland need in so many ways. James Lowe, for me, is possibly the most important player in the Irish backline, because he brings that power boost, that exit approach. But if there's one player who could be more important than him, or in the back 3, sorry, we'll go with back 3, it could be Matt Hansen, simply because I think Okay, I don't want to jinx it, but I think the World Cup is ready to meet Mac Hansen. I think that's kind of the rugby he's playing at the moment. Faded out of the game a bit last night, but started sharp again. He was absolutely sensational against England. Unreal. And he's so important to our Ireland play because he's offering his kicking option more than he has before, I've noticed. And he's probably been a first receiver just a little bit more, especially in that England game. But there's not a fault in his game at the moment. If everyone's fit, it's Lowe, it's Hansen, it's Keenan. We know this. This isn't new. And I suppose for Jimmy O'Brien and Keith Earls, what can they do? Just be there. Just be there. If you're called upon in a World Cup semi-final or quarterfinal, just be there and be ready. And we know they can be because Jimmy O'Brien has done it. His first test cap was off the bench against South Africa and he had to go into 13. Keith Earls has had years of just waiting and waiting. And then when he's asked to do it, he steps up in the big moment. In terms of how Ireland play, I do wonder, what way did they go? Like O'Brien's probably next up. Well, he's next up behind Keenan, but he's probably next up as well if Hansen drops out. But then you could go with Earls. Um, like I do feel like Jimmy O'Brien on the right wing hasn't been as good. Maybe that's just a kind of a perceived bias because I know he has the left boot and he wouldn't be kicking as much. But listen, like all we can do is wait and see. If Mac Hansen gets injured, it's a huge blow because he is, to use Andy Farrell's own words, he's that untidy winger that you wanted. He's messy and he's Lionel Messi. He's not, but he's a lot of fun. And the Ireland squad picks itself. I think the 23 almost picks itself. Not quite there for the subs bench, but it's first game up is against Romania. That is just under 2 weeks' time now. Saturday, the 9th September at 2:30 in Bordeaux, and that is live on Virgin Media 1, I believe, and ITV for those in the UK. And for those outside of the UK and Ireland who are listening, I'm sorry, I don't know where it's on. But that is our first game, is against Romania. The indication is we're going to go strong. If that's the case, you're looking at Porter. Hooker is probably the one position we don't know because we don't know the fitness levels. You see Furlong, Ryan, Byrne, O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris, Gibson Park, Sexton, Aki, Ringrose, Lowe, Hansen, Keenan. The first 15 picks itself. They mightn't go that way. Like the one luxury about a World Cup is you will have a lot of media following the squad the whole way through, and they'll be able to see. And like realistically, if Ireland go full strength against Romania and play to the level that they can and play and put up a performance that says, "Hello world, we're here. We're here to take over." Then they could put 80 or 90 points on Romania quite easily. If that happens, they probably rotate against Tonga, and I think what should be, say, a 25, 30 point win becomes maybe 15, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Like the most important thing is, especially when Ireland are a bonus point team, like in terms of dominance of, tries scored, margin of victory, bonus points, only England in 03 have come as close as Ireland's Grand Slam this year, or even comes close to them. I think they were better in terms of the points difference and all that. But Ireland are well able to score tries. It's their go-to. And that's why when we get frustrated about silly little mistakes at line-out time, we almost forget about it again because we're going to make a lot of 22 entries. Do we need to be more clinical? I've spoken about this before. Probably not. We probably need to be a little bit more clinical against big teams when, we might have to go for the three a bit more a bit more often. Sorry about that. But again, it's fine. This isn't me sitting in a room, like that gif of "this is fine" as the room burns down. This genuinely is fine. This is a good squad. This is a good 23. And I will touch upon it in the preview article that goes live next week. For me, the only thing that beats Ireland is the external factors, not Ireland themselves. 2019 Ireland would not have beaten Samoa last night. 2015 Ireland would probably have gone to a World Cup final if they stayed injury free. But you can't lose 6 of your starters and expect to get to a World Cup final unless you're, the greatest team that has ever lived, or you're in the Barbie side of the draw. 2011 Ireland did not have that belief. 2007 Ireland did not have anything to go off in the weeks and months prior. And 2003 is just so far back that we can't really say, Irish rugby's in a completely different place now. We're winning more. And it's just a huge part of it. We're winning more. And we have confidence and we have a game plan that works. People say, oh, Leinster got found out, so Ireland will. But Ireland have answered every single question. Guys like, say, Caelan Doris would probably be disappointed in his 2 Heineken Cup finals. But when was the last time Caelan Doris put in a disappointing performance for Ireland? I'm not going to leave you waiting, but I know well you're going to be sitting there waiting because it doesn't happen very often. Josh van der Fleer was World Player of the Year in 2022. Mac Hansen could be World Player of the Year in 2023, especially if Ireland do go on to win the World Cup. This is the levels we're talking about. This is not just a very good golden generation of 5 or 6 players. This is an unbelievable system. This is incredible depth. And this is a team that is going in the right direction. I don't think Ireland have peaked. I said this when we won the Grand Slam. I don't think Ireland have peaked in terms of game plan and all those factors. I really don't. I think there's more layers to come. If Andy Farrell is to be believed, they have more things up their sleeves than we could ever imagine. We've seen cross kicks in the last 2 weeks. It could well be another move like the midfield move. It could be, their line out. Granted, their line out would want to start clicking. It could be set piece. It could be defensively that they have something figured out that's going to make a huge difference. It could be their kicking game. They might have noticed something against, say, South Africa in the Rugby Championship and thought, right, we're going to send, maybe that's why Mac Hansen's kicking that bit more. Maybe Mac Hansen's in a 10 more because they're watching Willie LaRue. I know when you focus on the opposition more than yourself, that's when you lose. But I feel like Ireland are at a stage now where the whole world is focused on Ireland and how to stop them. The entire world. But no one has done it yet. They have not lost a game in a year and 2 months. I think it's 16 games or something. No, that's not right. 16 games at home, I think. It's 12 or 13 games in total now, or 14 games or something. And, they went to New Zealand. And I know this is dangerously slipping into World Cup preview pod now. And we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. But they went to New Zealand, got hammered in the first test, but in the other 2 tests, should have won by more than they did, which was a 2-score victory. That is how much of a shock the first test became. Because they could have won that 3-0 if they didn't just mentally and physically just let the jet lag kick in, I think it was, really. They beat South Africa in Dublin, not playing brilliantly. Granted, I think South Africa have improved. But again, they didn't play brilliantly. And they got the job done. They beat Australia playing quite poorly. Like really, really poorly. They did not stick to their normal principles at all. And got the job done there. And Australia aren't great, but they were better this time last year than they are now. And as I say this, they are taking on France. And I've completely forgotten about that game. And I'm actually midway through the podcast going to check to see how that's going, because I genuinely have forgotten about it. And France are 16-5 in front. Okay, that's kind of to be expected, isn't it? And they went into a Grand Slam. And the only thing I would say is all of Ireland's big wins, bar the New Zealand tour, have been at home. But that just depends on how you view going to Murrayfield or how you view going to Twickenham or the Millennium Stadium. If Ireland are going to win, they're not going to be at home. Simple as that. So they can forget about that. They will not be talking about home advantage or the crowd being great. Yeah, they might throw in a couple of media lines because it will be true. They'll get good support. But like I was saying last night, or before last night, that the French could rally in behind Ireland. They booed them off the pitch last night. I know it's Bayonne. I know it's that type of a a real tough place to go. It's almost Pro D2, even when they're a top 14 club. But Ireland are not going to have friends over at the World Cup. And it's time to embrace that. It's time to embrace the siege mentality and the chip on the shoulder, because they're not going to do this the easy way. The only way Ireland win this World Cup is by doing it the hard way, because they're going to have one game where it's just not going to click and they're just going to have to find a way, any way at all, of winning. But with 33 players that have been named, they can find that way. And that's where I'll leave it, because we've been going for around an hour now at this stage. Thank you very much for tuning in if you have, and if you've made it this far. I don't know how. I don't even know. I've been saying it's the first time I've done this. There will be more of these to come. I do promise that. But thank you so much for listening. So, depending on if you're listening to this after Sunday night, there will also be a recap pod of Ireland v Samoa already gone live on the channel. I will be away this week, so I mightn't be posting as much as I should be, or to promote the podcast, but there will be a Tier 2 Nations preview pod. There'll be an Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile preview pod, and there will be a Japan preview pod. They're all to come up this week. And then, of course, we move on to Ireland and the tournament itself from Saturday into next week, because we are just 12 days away from the Rugby World Cup starting. I can't wait. I'm sure you can't either. So, thanks so much for listening. Please do subscribe. Links are always down below if you want to subscribe on multitude of platforms, and please do. It's really appreciated. Tell a friend. That's, that helps. Sharing, commenting, leaving a review. Apparently that helps. I do not know how, but apparently it does. But anyways, I'm finished. Thank you so much for listening, and take it easy.